I heard this morning, and I don't know when this show's going to go to air, but it doesn't matter. I heard this morning that Biden's now considering giving Julian Assange a pardon, which that's new narrative.
Yes.
Obviously, Biden sort of represents the left, I guess, in the US. The election's coming up. Someone like you, how would you approach that? Because would you start to say to yourself, well, hang on a minute. Are you changing because it's proper to Biden? Are you changing because it's proper to change, or are you changing because you want to make sure that you satisfy those people who are actually maybe going to vote for you in the next election? Is this real or not real?
That's what's exhausting about this is that they withhold change until an election year, and we'll see it with the Albanese government too. They're a in quotations progressive government. I think they're moderate at best, and I think that in this election year that's coming up, we will see a lot of commitments when we've seen a lot of inaction for the last year or two. Like I've seen them do very little in terms of policy.
Well, budget's coming up, you're going to see a heap.
Exactly. But that's what I mean. They wait till they're primed and they do something for a headline and that's it. And then we wait another year for anything meaningful to happen again because they don't want to rock the boat. Biden's the same. He's copying a lot over Israel and his inaction around, he's basically weaponizing what's occurring in Palestine. And so
for his own benefit.
Absolutely.
And in fact, for some states where it's critical for him to win.
Yes.
It's not even across America.
No.
It's for specific states where he must win.
Which is pork barreling, really.
Well, if we want to come up with a term, that's one that comes to mind.
Yeah. And so it's exhausting because you're looking at these people knowing they could do anything at any time and they wait and they do it when it's appropriate for a headline and for a vote. And it really comes back to that view of like politicians are just people and they're just trying to retain power. And it's like a firm belief I have, like people who really want to be a cop or a politician are probably the people that shouldn't have the job. If you desperately want it, you're probably not the appropriate person. And I think that it's very rare to come across someone who is there for the genuine reasons. And that concerns me. But how do you change that culture? How do you get people in that care and don't succumb to that ecosystem?
What do you think about this Assange situation?
I think that he should be pardoned. I think what I read a few weeks ago before Biden's come out and suggested this is like that the UK wanted confirmation that he wouldn't face the death penalty. I think that he's been held for long enough. I think that...
So he's done his time?
Yep.
So to speak. Yeah, but does that mean... Can I extrapolate
from that?
Yeah,
please do.
Can I extrapolate from that? Does that mean that you think he committed a crime?
No,
Or a transgression?
Here's what I think. I do not think Julian Assange committed a crime. The reason I generally don't talk too much about Assange is that there were allegations of sexual assault made against him.
Oh, no,
I know, but I can't put it aside because I think all of those things sit together.
But that's a different...
Well, but I overtly don't think he committed a crime. I think he released confidential information for public interest that was for good.
Okay, can I just talk about because from America's point of view, they just take a hardline view. You released government secrets or defense secrets, whatever it was, defense secrets.
Yeah.
Therefore, you got to pay the piper. Okay.
Yep.
And may well be that he's already paid because he's already been effectively incarcerated for all this time.
Yep.
But just put that aside for a second, because for me, it may be that he should have released that information.
He shouldn't have?
He should have.
Yes, I agree.
Because people actually should know about this sort of shit.
I agree. That's my position.
And but there's an old rule in the US that talks that's been around forever. No matter what, you do not commit this transgression by giving the enemy, not you or me, but the enemy, whoever that might be, access to stuff that's been that we keep in secret that might actually have a deleterious effect on us in relation to our ability to defend our shores, for example.
Yeah.
But one would say, but now we're in a different world now. Now we're saying, no, but some of the stuff he should have released. Now, but therefore some of the stuff maybe he shouldn't have, some of the stuff he should have.
It's semantics, isn't it?
But it's getting it's sort of like get tricky. And how do you on your show, I don't know if you've done a podcast on this, but how do you on your show approach, it's complicated.
Yeah, it is.
How do you approach it?
Well, I think it's about really laying out the timeline of what occurred. And you can't do that in a 10-minute news segment, but doing it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And then really discussing, I think from my perspective, it's like, what is the purpose of the law here? right? Exactly what you've just said, like that the US is saying you've given information to the enemy, right? But then I kind of look and think, okay, let's look at this. What's occurred? What was his intent and what was the impact, right? So his intent was really to show war crimes that had been committed, and his impact was that he did. Like that was unleashed, this information about what the US had done. Both the intention and the impact, I support the release of those things. I support that decision making. And I think in the same position, I would have done exactly what he did. I don't know if I'm brave enough, but I would hope that I could. I don't think, and earlier when I said like, I think he's done his time, I mean, surely Biden just lets him go. Like he has been caged basically for so long.
That's a practical outcome.
Totally. But I think in terms of my personal view, the approach I have is laying out the facts, laying out the law, and then having a conversation about what is freedom of speech and what is kind of, in terms of US military secrets, like what is the impact here, the intention, and what does the enemy get from this? Ultimately, I think when the US says it's about the enemy, they're lying. I think it's about the fact that they've been exposed. And I think anything else is a lie that they would say in defense of that. So, and we're seeing it in Australia right now. We're seeing a former military lawyer, David McBride, who's being prosecuted over leaking similar information about Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. And I've backed his case when we covered it on our podcast as well, because this is important. And these things are just buried under the guise of like government protection. But that's not what it is at all. It's to conceal crime. The government has the ability to determine what is considered crime at an individual level, but when it's turned on them, they're unwilling to accept it. Instead, they prosecute the person calling it out. And I think that's fundamentally wrong.
So but in the beginning, I was in the earlier period when you and I were talking about, when I sort of said the law's a bit of an ass anyway, like it's all fictional. So on one hand, if he committed a crime, it's Assange, for example, according to US legal position, it's a fiction that they created. But equally, if he accuses someone of a war crime, can a war crime be equally fictional?
See, I don't agree with you that the law is fictional. But I think it's really about public rules, right, around what is fair and what is moral behaviour.
Or is it more about what is better to sort of control society, societal control? So we don't have, in a non-anarchist way, we don't need anarchy.
I was about to say, you an anarchist?
No, I'm not. But I accept controls in order, just like religion helps control some things too. I accept controls to the point of view of stopping anarchy. In other words, if there's no rules, I can go and chop someone's head off.
Yep.
Which is sort of what some of the terrorists tend to do from time to time.
Correct.
There's no rules.
Yeah.
But like that's the worst position. But then when you start layering that and layering and keep layering, all of a sudden there's rules about everything. You know, what you can wear, what you can say, how quickly you got to speak. You know, I'm against that shit. Like I know you got to stop anarchy down here. I get that. The question is, how far do you go?
Yeah.
So Assange is an example. He's calling out war crimes, but are you saying the war crimes? Would you say the war crimes are actually at an amoral level and therefore are close to anarchy, a form of anarchy, therefore should be called out, compared to his crime, which is something that's just developed a matter of convenience for the government of the United States? Is that what you are saying?
I think I kind of agree with a bit of both, actually, what you're saying. I do not think the US should be able to commit war crimes in Afghanistan and not have that held to account. But I also think, in regards to the second option, it is a law that's been created by the US to protect themselves. Both can exist there. So I would sit a bit differently to you. I believe in most laws. I understand their purpose and I believe that they help society function better. I also believe that parts of the system need to be completely reformed because I actually don't really believe in a prison system. I do not think that 90% of people that are currently in prison should be in prison.
What about the 10% that are?
I think the 10% that are people that have committed serial murder,
so
serial pedophilia.
Yeah, society's safer.
I believe most crimes should still exist in the rule of the law. I think the way that they should be punished should be different. So I believe that most of the behaviours that form under the Crimes Act, say, are real, existing, and should have accountability as a form, whatever that system looks like. I don't believe that most of those crimes should result in people being caged. I think that most people who commit crime have existed in socioeconomic standards and situations and been unsupported by the government that have led to them committing crimes. And I wish,
caused by the government sometimes.
Exactly. And I wish that those barriers were removed so that people were more supported in society to not have to commit crime. And I also think that the way that we go about prosecuting is not right. The way that we force victims to re-traumatize themselves through that process. I also think that if we asked most victims of different crimes what they wanted out of the outcome, it probably wouldn't be, and this is obviously a generalization because there's so many crimes, but if, there's a lot of like the Me Too movement, right? A lot of it is around this culture war where you've got people saying like presumption of innocence, fair process, all of these things. But no one's arguing against the presumption of innocence. What we're arguing against is a court system which forces victims to re-traumatize themselves and never really gets a just outcome for anyone. Because ultimately what they want is for the crime to never have occurred or not to occur again. And you don't really get that through 1% of people being jailed or through the jail system anyway. It's not rehabilitative, right? So I disagree with the way that our prison system and legal system punishes perpetrators instead of helping them from childhood or helping rehabilitate them after the crime's been committed. That's my kind of belief system as opposed to yours, which is really like a lot of law is fiction.